thanks everyone for joining. Obviously, we're talking about modern growth stacks in a mobile-first world. So just as a way of setup and introduction, my name's Ben Desailly, Senior Martech Advisor at The Luminary. The Luminary are an agency consultancy with a deep speciality in Martech, marketing technology and data, essentially. So we work with all of the different brands on this panel already, as well as many more, and could spend hours talking about growth stacks, Martech stacks, all the different ways all the pieces fit together. So really looking forward to this. And just as one last bit of housekeeping, please feel free to add questions as you go. We'll try to maybe work them into the conversation or answer them at the end. But please feel free to get involved. So I might just let the others introduce themselves. Maybe we'll go to Govind first.
Oh, it's me. Okay. I've seen some of you yesterday. I'm Govind. I take care of partnerships and sales at Branch. I'm based in Singapore. Look forward to being part of this panel.
And Sherry.
Cool. Hi, I'm Sherry Chao, and I'm a Senior Solutions Engineer at Segment based in Sydney. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with Segment, we're a customer data platform, and we specialize in the collection of routing of user behavioral events. And also I was an early employee at Iterable as well. They're a marketing automation platform.
Awesome. Ben?
Hey guys, Ben here. I currently head up growth for APAC for Mixpanel, which is a product analytics technology, helping product managers to answer those burning questions around how their customers are experiencing their product and optimizing for lifetime value and retention.
Awesome. And then Hastu, the MoEngage rep himself.
Yep. So Hastu here. I look after the growth and sales efforts for us in Southeast Asia and Australia. MoEngage is, of course, a intelligent customer engagement platform. What I do is essentially spend most of my time talking about how customer engagement can be optimized. How do you understand your users better? How do you engage with them better? And really, how do brands add more value to a customer's life, really?
Right. All right, well, hopefully everyone's kind of aware of who the platforms are and the people, so we may as well get straight in. So we're obviously talking about growth stacks, and the best place to start is trying to define what that is. I don't think everyone would be super clear in being able to talk through that. So the question is, how would you define growth and growth stacks? And being someone that talks a lot about Martech, do you see a growth stack being an evolution of Martech or something completely different? And maybe we'll go to you, Ben, first, if you want to start.
Cool. I get to answer the fun question.
They're all fun.
There's a good quote by like a really famous product manager, Andy Johns at Facebook. I think he kind of frames it up really nicely. He says that if finance owns the flow of cash in and out of a company, growth owns the flow of customers in and out of a product. And I quite like to think of growth as about like identifying the different tactics and levers that you can play with at every stage of the funnel, from the top of the funnel right through the bottom of the funnel. And then post becoming a customer, it's then focusing on that retention curve across and optimizing across product marketing and services to ultimately increase the lifetime value of the customer and keep them coming back. And I think all of the technologies on this panel sort of play a role in improving that customer experience or conversions across different parts of that funnel or life cycle. The second part of your question there around like, did marketing tech, is this an extension of marketing technology? I think it's interesting, like going back, to the early 2000s, I think like some of the kind of marketing technology companies that existed and were paving the way in retention, like Adobe kind of comes to mind, and they were like big proponents of like retention marketing and coined this kind of research which looked at like a 1% increase in retention would exponentially increase your revenue over time I think they quoted like 10%. And so they were like kind of pioneers in this retention mindset. It came from very much that marketing function. And no one really knew back then how many customers they were losing every month. So retention was kind of like an under-focused area. It was really about acquisition. So I definitely think Martech played a role in putting it on the map, but you then had this kind of like explosion of SaaS technology companies and modern e-commerce businesses that emerged in kind of the mid 2000s. And, you know, they were all getting valued at 10 to 15x revenue multipliers when they were exiting. And some of the metrics they were focusing on, like ARR growth, lifetime value, CAC payback periods, customer retention. And I think that really like supercharged the whole growth mindset. So I think it's kind of like Martech paved the way, and then SaaS and e-commerce businesses really like kind of like accelerated the growth function.
Yeah, awesome. Govind, did you have a view on how you defined growth stacks and growth?
Yeah, for sure. I think just as an extension to what Ben said, I think from my perspective, basically 10 years or 15 years ago, marketing was simpler. It was only web. And because it was simpler, it was purely a marketing technology. There were many players, you know, figuring out how to help that that phase of the business. But now if you see, we have multiple platforms, we have mobile apps, we have mobile web, and we also have desktop, and we have offline. We need to figure out a way to engage with users across these platforms. That's when there needs a blend of product and marketing together. That became a growth function. So not just marketing, so product was different, marketing was different. Now how, like for example, let's say if we have to control a user experience, we need a product. And if we have to deliver that user experience, we need a marketing platform. So the blend of that is growth. If you don't have one, then your marketing efforts won't be successful. So that's how, you know, it has, the evolution has happened, and the rest of it is exactly what Ben said. And then when growth function came in, the stacks became important. What caters to that stack? There's one company figuring out top of the funnel, one company figuring out the experience, one company figuring out the bottom of the funnel.
Yeah, we definitely see that as well in terms of not just being stuck in a niche of marketing, I guess, but working with digital product marketing teams and anyone that's trying to get more customers and that growth element. So it really is kind of more of an umbrella, wider term than, I guess, marketing alone.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were to start tomorrow and either be a startup and try and build a growth stack from nothing, or maybe you're a larger business, but if things aren't working, you want to blow it up and start again, where would you start? And I'm going to throw that to you, Sherry, if you want to attack that one.
Yeah, so if you're starting from scratch, you definitely need a tool for gathering insights about your app or your website. So this is going to be like an analytics tool. And I think everyone starts with Google Analytics because it's free. And it's really easy to just chuck that script on your site and start gathering some page views and understand where traffic is coming from. And if you're already using Google Analytics and you want to graduate to something a little bit more advanced and actually be able to see specific users and what they're doing and create funnel reports, then Mixpanel is a really great option. In terms of communicating with your customers, I come from like the email marketing space, so I love using email. It's usually responsible for about 40% of conversions. It's definitely like the most efficient channel for driving conversions. So I would definitely use a tool for communicating with my customers through email. Obviously, this is a mobile panel, so we also have to think about push notifications and SMS. And so beyond analytics and email or a marketing automation tool, if you still have budget left, I would definitely invest in ad platforms. So running some ads on Facebook or Google. Obviously, you're trying to acquire new users and some new eyeballs on your product. So the toughest part about building this growth stack is figuring out the exact tools you want to use, and then also finding the engineering resources to implement them all. Luckily, and not to push Segment too hard, but if you put something in like Segment in place early, then you're really just writing one integration, the Segment integration, and then you can reuse this integration for different tools across all categories because we're essentially like a super API. So you can just turn on the different integrations within our UI instead of having to implement individual tools.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, so it's not really that you wouldn't necessarily be the first and only tool in the stack, but you would definitely enable all the others to play their role.
And maybe to kind of add on to that from like a different angle, like if you've sort of got limited budget and resources as well, and you have to prioritize certain things over another, I like to kind of think about it as you should really think about start with the customer and think about what is the ideal experience that you want them to go through that's going to create this kind of repeat buying or or coming back to the product experience, and think about the tactics that are going to drive that behavior. Once you kind of identify that, then it's about like finding the tools that are going to deliver that experience. It kind of reminds me of like when Gojek first launched into Singapore, and I was really excited because Grab was hiking up the prices significantly. It was becoming really expensive to travel to work in my area. And but like my experience when I first utilized Gojek, all the notifications I was getting were still in Bahasa, and we couldn't figure out how to change it to English. So for me, that was a really negative first experience for using them in Singapore, and probably contributed why I probably still use Grab predominantly more. So yeah, think about that ideal first experience that's going to drive that repeat behavior.
Okay, great. Yeah, really focusing on those use cases and prioritizing from there. So kind of related to that, if you do have your use cases ready, you know what you're trying to achieve, how do you deal with all the confusion in market as to the differences between your products, the other products, and just the noise, I guess, that exists in this space? And I was wondering, Hastu, do you have a view on that?
Sure. Yeah, no, I think we see all kinds of confusion. Confusion of how are we any different than some of our direct competitors? I've been asked how we're different than Branch. I've been asked how we're different than Segment. So I think there's of course a lot of confusion around what tool that you should really be using and what does the platform do. And I think that comes back to looking at platforms today in a silo versus looking at your entire growth stack in itself. Right? So I'd say once you start looking at the broader growth stack, some of that confusion starts to go away. Because when you're looking at a growth stack, you're looking at the CDP that you need to start tunneling data to the right places. You start looking at the analytics that you need to really analyze this data that's coming through. You start looking at the marketing automation piece and what does this data tell you to do, and what does this data tell you about what messages you should be sending. And then, of course, the attribution of what's working. Am I getting installs from Facebook, even though I'm spending a lot of money there? And are these installs really converting and adding value? So I think having that broader view of what your entire growth tech stack is definitely one of the best ways to reduce that confusion. So I'd say if you're a company who's relatively forward with your growth tech stack and you've got the budgets and you're now looking at optimizing those efforts, take a step back and look at the whole picture, and that will simplify some of that confusion. But I think from a point of view of startups, from the point of view of some of the companies that are earlier in this stage, I think confusion that we see around MoEngage has been a lot of it's only push notifications, it's only mobile engagement, and I think we ourselves have grown from that a lot more towards an omni-channel experience and more focused towards essentially delivering the same experience to a user across different channels. So that's also confusion on what do we do? And I think that comes with every product. I'm sure everybody on this panel has seen that. About 20% or 30% of what you really do is recognized, and the other 70% is what you're trying to get people to understand. So yeah, take a step back, look at the whole growth stack, and it might start making more sense.
It's very rare that, all of us also are, if we're working with a customer and they've got confusion, because we're we tend to partner so closely, like all the people on this panel, we're collaborating a lot more than, I guess, 5 years ago now to help customers understand where all the different parts fit in. So I would say this problem will also solve itself over time, just with the acceleration of the partnerships that we're all forming.
Yeah, great. What about you, Govind and Branch? How do you find people understand what you do, and how do you go explaining it? And what's your experience there?
I think from our perspective, what we see is that it completely depends on which industry the money is in. For example, if we talk a lot about attribution, that's where a lot of money is in. Attribution is a very established market because a lot of money goes into ads and people need to track those ads. So everyone needs an attribution platform. That's like a baseline. And that's why they reach out to a Branch or companies like Branch. But then Branch as a platform offers a lot more. We take a lot of consultative approach in terms of how we approach a particular company. For example, let's say there's a company with multiple platforms. They are struggling to move users between platforms and identify which platform is working better for them. Where are the users? Are the users on email? Are the users on their contact-based CRM? Such kind of things. And sometimes ads is not the only one they need to look acquiring users. They might also have a lot of assets and contact base with them that can convert into growth, as we call it. Now, when companies come to us, they always come to attribution because they've heard the word of attribution all the time. Now, that's the challenge for us, that we need to convert that interest of attribution alone into a wider aspect of what Branch covers as a product, and educate the prospect of what they can do. And sometimes customers themselves are surprised that, oh, without me spending a lot of money, I can still get a lot of installs. I can still engage with a lot of my potential customers. So that's the thing, right? I mean, because there's so much money in ads, and because every company is spending a lot of money, they need to raise money. They raise millions of dollars, and the first thing that they get to their mind is, let's go spend that money. So I think that's the exact point where that's the confusion that some of them will have. For example, a company mature enough to understand what these value propositions are, I think they would already know where to invest their money. They've already figured out what they need to do in terms of product, experience, other channels. But some companies definitely go by the market, go by what other companies do. Just because other companies are spending a lot of money, they also would want to. So yes, of course, attribution is pretty critical and crucial, and we invest a lot of money ourselves into acquiring customers on attribution. But it is also important for us to educate the market across other features or solutions that Branch has as a value proposition.
Yeah, awesome. Chao, did you have any kind of view on that? I mean, I know from my personal experience and the Luma, we spend a lot of time explaining the value of CDPs and the way that they can help stitch pieces together. And there's still a lot of confusion, especially in Australia, around that. How do you go with explaining the value of a tool like Segment?
Yeah, so Segment, or CDP, that's actually a relatively new product category. And a lot of tools will call themselves a CDP, and the features vary significantly across every single CDP. The basic gist of what we do is we create a standard, and we have libraries that are specialized for collecting customer behavioral events or data. And then we allow you to use it for multiple purposes to maximize its value. So we serve as a single collection point, and we allow you to create that sort of golden record or 360 view of the customer. And we serve as your truth or source of truth for your customer data. And then we maintain integrations with like 300 plus different tools. So everyone sitting on this panel today, right? Segment serves as an integration point for you. So that allows you to use this data for so many different purposes. You can use it for, like, it plugs into a CRM, it plugs into email marketing tools or push marketing camp tools. So you can trigger and segment your users. We collect data that pipe into Mixpanel, so you can build dashboards and reports. And we can also funnel data into a warehouse or into an AI tool, right? So it's basically just one way to collect customer data and then be able to use it for all types of purposes.
Yes, it's for the reusability, isn't it? Getting multiple outputs from the one effort of collecting it in the first place.
Yeah,
Awesome.
exactly. So I think like the types of problems that we solve are so broad. It's basically if you have a problem that involves customer data, we probably have an answer for you.
Okay. So machine learning is often a hot topic. I'm sure it's been talked about a lot in the other sessions. I'm really interested in terms of a growth stack and mobile first growth stack, where in the maturity of growth stacks would you see machine learning capabilities becoming a must-have or a key part of that tool? And maybe, Ben, want to start with you?
Yeah, let me think. I think, yeah, there's kind of two ways to look at it. There's many areas of machine learning that you can apply across your stack, and I think there's two things that I'd keep in mind when trying to implement machine learning for either enhanced personalization or creating efficiencies. One is for machine learning to really have a good effect or impact on the bottom line, what you're trying to achieve. You need a certain element of data to start with in the first place. So if you're a startup and you're launching new products and you've got limited amount of data that you've got available to work with, machine learning might not be the most effective thing to implement at that point in time until you start to get more information about your customers, more volume of open and click behavior to kind of power that machine learning, whether that be on-site personalization, in-app personalization, or machine learning around optimal times to send your communication. So really, there's really a point that you need to hit in terms of volume of data and scale for it to be worthwhile. And then at the other end of the spectrum, if you've got all that data available, there's kind of this decision that businesses are making at the moment, whether they're going to build their own machine learning capabilities. It might be at a very basic level, they want to own the algorithms behind personalizing their website, or they want to buy that technology. And then it's kind of a matter of, do you have big enough data science teams to own that? It's a sort of a trade-off of resources and versus should we outsource that, and what's really important in terms of that customer experience.
Okay. Hastu, do you have a view? Like, obviously, do people come to you with wanting machine learning outputs, or how does that come up?
Sure, it does come up a lot, and I think just echoing what Ben said, machine learning, AI, it's only as good as the data that you have, right? So if you don't have enough data, you're not essentially going to be able to make product recommendations to users. You're not going to be able to effectively predict who's about to make a certain type of purchase and find the right trends. But I also believe that for lean teams and startups and smaller businesses that are, not just getting started, but let's say they've got reasonable amount of data around communications, they've been running A/B tests. I think there's definite value in using some of the out-of-the-box machine learning systems out there. A/B testing for one, just setting up a few different variants and letting the system decide which is the best performing one, and majority of the users get that. I think I definitely see value there because it's just for them minimal effort in optimizing for conversions or best time to send as well. While of course the more data that you have, better that particular solution gets, but it's relatively low effort. It's relatively low on its data requirement as compared to something like recommendations and stuff like that. So I'd say there's clear value in using some of the out of the box AI or rather machine learning systems, but But yeah, again, it's only as good as the data you have. It's only as good as how much data you're able to A, collect, and B, understand and draw trends out of. So I would always recommend, going with a solution that knows what it's doing rather than trying to build everything from scratch, trying to build everything yourself, because the difference is the 10 data scientists that you might be able to throw at a problem versus the 100 that an AI or machine learning system has been able to put over the last 5, 6, 10 years, right? So I think it'll always come down to, do you want to focus on what you do best, or do you want to, invest in a platform that allows you to get there quicker?
Yeah. And do you have such bespoke needs that you have to create your own model, or is there somewhat a templatable approach that someone's already solved? Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's something that we always talk about when it comes to build versus buy, is there's a technology company that spent decades building what you need versus you starting today and taking focus away from what you do best. So is that really something you should be doing today?
Yeah, great. I think that's always a really interesting one. So in terms of sort of touching on the mobile first element in a bit more depth, how are you finding the shift to be more mobile first is changing the tech landscape and this concept of growth stacks? Maybe I'll throw to you, Govind.
I think in terms of growth stacks, right? I mean, we've spoken about, I think, just when we started the session, we spoke about Martech, and we spoke about how the evolution has happened to growth stacks, which we specifically gave a department a term. And I think I think in terms of choosing or thinking about growth stacks, I think first we need to think about where we are as a company in terms of maturity. For example, let's say we are dealing with a new market or an existing market like an e-commerce or a video which is already out there. Now, for example, if you're dealing with a new mature audience, new sort of segment where we are creating that, I think there needs to be a lot of trial and error out there. I think there I would suggest that we should like completely keep ourselves out of growth stacks and think about what do we need to do in terms of creativity. But let's say we are talking about a mature areas, mature companies like e-commerce or short video formats where we already have successful models. And there we need to divide areas. For example, let's say we are dealing with an e-commerce company. An e-commerce company there's already a market set for that kind of a company. And there are already platforms which give that kind of an audience, like an ad network or a DSP or whatever. And then we go and start from there, figuring out how do we ensure that the audience are coming into the platform with the kind of product that I have. I think that's when you get the data in. Once you get the data in, then you decide. Then with that kind of intelligence that you have, what do we need to do in terms of product? Then you pick a company like Mixpanel, and figure out what you can do with that kind of analytics that Mixpanel shows you, and then choose a product like maybe let's say a MoEngage to figure out how to engage with the user across different platforms, whether it's push notification or email. I think, as I think Hastu also rightly pointed out in the initial point that he was making, is that we need to let the data decide what kind of a growth stack that we want to build, and most of the success relies on what is the first step that we're taking to engage with the audience in the first place.
Yeah, great. And Sherry, do you have a view as to how, I guess, that the shift to either mobile first or just rise of mobile tech and need is shaping the use of segment as an example, or CDPs as a category?
Yeah, so I think for segment, like we have to think about, we often get the question like, how do you stitch users across devices? And so that is the big question. Obviously, mobile first means that a person definitely they have a computer, they have a phone, they might have a iPad, right? And so they're browsing, shopping, viewing things across all these different screens. And it is a challenge to stitch that together. So we have to be conscious of that. And then also mobile first means having to stay on top of mobile trends and things that are happening in the market. For example, Apple recently is shifting, or now they're requiring apps to get consent before we can collect IDFA. And so that's going to cause quite a stir. Also, TikTok is becoming like a big channel for advertising. So that is, we now Segment might need to think about having an integration from an advertising perspective with TikTok. So we have to kind of constantly stay on top of these mobile trends.
Yeah, the kind of mobile first landscape, or it's kind of created two problems. One is that it's become very complicated for us to build technologies like what we're doing now for a great mobile experience. We can't do everything. So all of us have kind of had to specialize in our fields because of the complexities that mobile's brought about. And secondly, like amazing brands like your Ubers and your Netflixes of the world and your Grabs, etc. They have like really set the bar high in terms of what the customer expects. And with kind of a mobile first interaction, it's very much about like on demand, getting access to services in real time. And that means that all of these technologies have had to, re-architect their systems or build the architecture that can handle streaming data, that can respond in real time. And this is also where Segment is such a powerful tool, because I would have thought that obviously the mobile requirement has like accelerated CDP adoption, because if you're using heaps of different tools across an ecosystem, you need to pipe that data in real time between them to deliver that ultimate customer experience. Then Segment's really great at kind of streaming that data into all the different channels and tools and technologies and bringing it all together. It's really that end customer expectation has driven a new way of thinking about how we design our technology.
Yeah, one of the other things I think, in addition to that, now we are living in the world where there's no travel, but I think what's also happening is that all of the traditional companies are being forced to adopt to the mobile first ways as well. So we have customers like airline companies like United Airlines, who has completely shifted their entire model of engaging with users on mobile, whether it is as soon as the user lands at the airport, the check-in is on mobile and the reminder is on mobile. And when the user gets in, the boarding information is on mobile. Whatever the boarding pass is on mobile, and then the user lands, that the user gets a notification to book a taxi with an affiliate partnership, that's on mobile. So basically the entire experience for traditional company is also on mobile right now. That is because they're being forced to adopt to the mobile first ways. And this was especially very, very active in travel hospitality business, which we are not seeing now. But if it was not there, it would have gone like a lot more sophisticated and advanced than we would have seen today.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting watching, like you said, the traditional businesses trying to take on that change, and I guess sometimes struggling and taking a while because it takes a long time to change anything in large organizations, and having all those mobile first startups, disruptors coming through and just kind of owning that space.
Yeah, that's where the Martech and growth stack comes into the picture, because they probably they probably would still be struggling with the Martech tools that they have. And I think it's on all of us to educate, such companies, the difference between these tools and what these tools really mean. Because with Martech, there is no experience, and there's just a web. They need to basically figure out the deliverability aspect of it. But now with growth, they also need to figure out the experience aspect of it. How are we ensuring that the user is actually getting what the user wants?
Yeah, great. So that we incorporate a few of the questions that are coming through, one that I'm especially curious to hear is from Michael or Mikhail. Are companies thinking of merging attribution SDKs with engagement SDKs such as MoEngage? So therefore, would there be a single SDK, more transparency, cost savings, blah, blah, blah? Sounds great in theory, but would you be ever talking about this?
Hey, Michael, thanks for throwing that over. But yeah, I think it's a question that Govind and I probably should answer together. And I think it comes back to being on what is our core, really. And for us, the core is engagement. For us, the core is, and picking up from the conversation we were having earlier, it's around the expectations that a user has of having a seamless experience on their fingertips all the time. So, and that's a lot of work in itself, right? It's a lot of work understanding the user. It's a lot of work delivering communication in real time. It's a big enough problem for us to solve today as is. And I think when it comes to attribution, there's a lot more to it. There's a lot of nuances that Branch understands that we don't today. So I think from our point of view, it's a matter of we know what we're good at, and we're focusing on improving that by the day. But I would still recommend Govind to tell us why we shouldn't be putting an attribution SDK in.
Yeah, I think the first thing that I would like to clear over here, I don't know if it's almost a myth now, is that having one SDK doing everything doesn't really matter, because having multiple SDK doesn't really matter. That's, I think everyone should understand this, that, oh, why can't I have everything in one SDK? It doesn't really matter if you have one or two SDKs, number one. Number two is that engagement really deals with a lot of PII data, because you need to understand the user very well to ensure that you give that kind of a personalization for that user, and calculate and go for that sort of an LTV. But when it comes to attribution, or when it comes to any acquisition strategy, it deals with a lot of privacy. We need to basically be aligned with a lot of privacy laws and a lot of security. We are doing a lot of predictive work over here. We are dealing with a lot of external data, external touch points, which is why these two tools will never be merged together, because you don't. Basically, what Branch is doing is that Branch is picking a bunch of users from a pile of users and bringing them to the platform, while MoEngage is dealing with those pile of users and figuring out what best can happen within those pile of users. Now, if you merge it, it's a conflict of interest. These platforms cannot be merged. I hope it makes sense.
Yeah, and yeah, I think it's a matter of us focusing on first party data and your own user data, whereas Branch is able to, because they don't have the same restrictions we do around PI, they're able to really identify unique users across channels, across platforms, and give you that insight. But the good thing is that we integrate very close. Raw from Branch can actually flow straight into MoEngage, so that data is still available to you, that's still actionable to you, and that is still going to add a lot of value to engagement efforts. And that's also where platforms like Segment come in, which allow us all to focus on what we're doing and what real value we add, and let Segment send everybody the right data.
Yeah, so both Branch and MoEngage require customer events from your app, right? So you could use the Segment SDK to collect customer events and send to those tools, and then just bundle, because MoEngage, I believe, like your SDK has to collect push tokens in order to be able to send push notifications, and then Branch does some special attribution magic, right? So you can use Segment SDK to collect the events, and then just bundle Branch and MoEngage for those additional features. So that might be like a lighter weight in terms of integration. Way to go.
Yeah, because I think we as all different companies had focused so much on the growth within our expertise. The industry is thriving right now. if we were all focusing on everything, I think we would be nowhere.
Yeah, nice. And I think we've got time for at least this one more question, but as we expected, there's a question about privacy changes, IDFA, and some of these pieces. Now, maybe Govind, throw to you first. Do you want to sort of talk about how the changes in privacy landscape might be affecting the capability to still advertise, to still attribute, to still engage?
Yeah, I think when it comes to IDFA has been like core to the app attribution industry since the beginning. Because the IDFA is an identity for Apple, so because it's so unique and consistent across all apps and devices, the possibility of deterministic matching, which is basically when a user clicks on a link outside of the app world and the user installs the app and gets into the app, then Apple, with the IDFA, we match it with the click ID. That's 100% deterministic match. The reason why we have that 100% deterministic match today with IDFA on Apple and GID on Google is because of these identities. Now, starting with iOS 14, Apple is making IDFA available only for those users who opt in, which basically means that you will get a notification where you'll have to say that I opt in to collect for the advertisers or the app or developers to collect the IDFA. And if you say no, the developer has no right to collect the IDFA. That basically leaves with no deterministic matching. So when the user clicks on an ad or any link outside of the platform, the app cannot for sure say that this user came from that link. There is a huge impact on that because the entire industry of attribution, ad networks, and engagement, re-engagement, remarketing is living on it. Today, you go to any e-commerce app, see a particular product, go back to another game, you still see that product that basically is giving you a personalized experience. But without the identity, a universal identity like IDFA, it is not possible. And companies can do a lot of fingerprinting matching, which is more of a probabilistic way. Can do it, but you might end up, if you see a product, let's say of an iPhone, you might end up seeing Samsung. So, that's how bad the impact can be. But having said that, Apple has built a parallel attribution system, which is very simple, gives us, only aggregate level of data, and doesn't give the insight that advertiser would want, ultimately to provide that kind of a personalization for users. Branch has a way to do it because Branch has always believed in its own persona graph. We have our own graph of users that we follow. We are able to provide a predictive matching, and of course, nothing is as 100% as a universal identifier can be, but we are using our predictive matching to get there, like at least like 85%. But that's the impact. The impact basically is that we are not able to, with the new policy of not having IDFA for 100% of the users, we are not able to, or no company in the world can predict that the user came from this particular link.
So yeah, really, we'll start having quite a big change, but I'm sure as time goes on, there'll be new ways to piece bits of it together. Yeah. Does anyone else want to tackle on how the privacy and regulations are changing for their world? No?
That's resounding no. I think maybe just very quickly, without going into too much depth, because I know we're sort of out of time. For us, we're usually taking attribution data that companies like Branch are passing us and understanding where that person has come from an advertising perspective and how they then continue to interact with the product. They become a valuable customer over time. Without some of that information, we really have to treat people specific, not based on what channel source or ad source they came from. We have to look at other ways of creating high value users and creating good product experiences. So downstream is becoming a bit more important, the analysis on what customers then do in the product, as opposed to just basing a lot of your strategy on optimizing for the right ad source. It's going to be a bit tougher.
Okay, great. And I'm being told we have one more question. So there's one here from Imam about what are some of the common challenges that are being seen about getting to a level of omni-channel personalization, being more than multi-channel or more than just one-to-all style engagement. Does anyone want to take that one?
I think I could take that. Yeah, I think one of the challenges with omni-channel, probably the biggest challenge in omni-channel, is identifying your unique users across all of these channels. And I think when that comes together with the expectation of a user to be identified and the expectation of a user to have the exact same experience. I mean, I have two phones, a computer, and if I'm interacting with the brand on any of these, I expect you to know what's in my cart. I expect you to know what product I need to buy in the next 3 days. And that's just how it is, right? But I think that's where the biggest challenge is. Do you know your customer across all of these channels? Are you able to identify them as unique? And are you able to then start picking up on trends and opportunities of, am I just browsing through products on my mobile phone, but actually making the purchases online, on my desktop, in the case of e-commerce? So I think picking up on some of these trends, picking up on the fact that users are allowing us to track a lot of data about them. How do we make the most of it and how do we deliver these experiences? I think that's the biggest challenge. So once you're able to identify a unique user across all of these channels, it's how do you use that data effectively to deliver an experience that's adding value, that is adding convenience, and that is not telling me to buy something on 5 different devices that are always on my person. So I think it's also caused a bit of a shift from a more marketing-driven and promotion-driven approach to a more convenience-driven and value-driven approach to marketing. So I think some of the challenges have been more around understanding that, respecting that, and being able to deliver the right sort of communications at the right time and the right experience.
Yeah, I think that value versus volume conversation is really interesting because a lot of the time talking about we're actually only going to send to a much smaller group, but we're going to get better returns, and that value is much higher, even though volume's down. It takes businesses a while to get used to that as a concept, but it's showing that it's a lot more powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we've seen a lot of times where the assumption is if I send 1 million more notifications today, I'm going to get as many conversions, but that doesn't hold true at all. If you're able to personalize at a user level, which you are with the growth stacks out there today, I think that your conversion rates are a lot higher. Your retention rates are a lot higher, and the LCV of a user is way, way higher because they actually trust your brand now, and they know that you're not just selling the same thing to them that you are to everybody else.
Any other closing thoughts on that one? Otherwise, I think we're nearly out of time. No? All right. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. That's been super insightful, really interesting, and hopefully everyone watching got a lot out of that. We'll reply to a couple more questions in text format that came through that we didn't get to talk about, but otherwise, thank you and hopefully talk to you soon.